What's up, you guys? My name is Carrell Andrews, and this is
Diana Fernandez.
Diana will be interviewing me on my experience of being an independent artist and what are some tips and advice that I would give other aspiring artists in this industry.
So, what piece of advice would you give an artist in regards to songwriting?
There's four. The first one would be know what you want to write about. When you know what you want to write about, everything else will fall into place. For example, me, I knew that I wanted to write about my relationship with God and finding a way to shift worship in the church and be creative and not be so stationary in my worship. So for me, it was having a broadness of creativity in my worship to God. The second advice I would give is keep track of your lyrics and your melodies. It's really important because you can hear a song and a melody, but how our brains work, if we don't take hold to what we hear in that moment, then that's probably a $1 million album, Grammy nominated album that will never get out because you didn't take the time to track that. Some ways of doing that would be, having your phone, recording it. Another way could be writing lyrics, taking notes on a journal or whatever you please to do. The third advice I would give is know your audience. It's so important to know your audience because when you know your audience, you understand them and they understand you. So because you understand them, then you know what to deliver. In my case, it is the church, the youth of the church, the younger generation of worshipers per se. I knew that I wanted to reach them in such a way because in today's society, so many of us are inspired by trendsetters. And I know it's such a off-topic word for the church, but in a way it's not because everyone wants to be inspired by someone. And in the area of music, I think in church, I think a lot of young people can relate to kind of being in such a box, depending on what church you came from. So for me, I knew that I didn't want to be in this box of worship. I wanted my music to just be broad, creative. I wanted God to hear my music and say, wow, that was something different. So knowing your audience is really, really important. Last but not least, my fourth point would be finding a title for your album, for your songs. This can come with like time and thought and just meditation. And as you go along in your journey of writing and experiences, then eventually a title will come.
How does one go about producing their album?
That's really good. Well, there are many ways of doing that, but first you want to find a producer. It's very important to find someone who is willing to invest in you as you in them. And it is important that as you find that producer, you make sure that producer can deliver what it is you're looking for. For example, for me, my situation was a bit different from the ordinary or usual artist because my producer is my best friend. So because of that, I took advantage of that relationship because I knew that he understood my style, my genre already. So when we got in the studio, everything flew. So just making sure that the person who you are allowing to be kind of the anchor of your music and what's being produced, you want to make sure that they understand your vision. Another thing would be is to make sure that when you get into the studio, you're so organized as the artist. One thing we have to realize and understand is time is money. When time is wasted, that is money that is still being placed into that time, into that studio session. So, for example, for me, when I would go into the studio, I would have all my voice memos or I have my lyrics ready. So when I got to the studio, all my producer had to do was, hey, you ready? Take one, take two, instead of, I don't really know what I want to do right now, and being timid. You want to avoid timidness. By all means, avoid that because timidness and being unsure and unorganized can be ineffective. You want to be very effective when you get into the studio.
How should an artist promote?
I like that one. Promotions. In many ways, the main way would be through social media, because our society we're just like social media fanatics, such an infatuation for us. So I think you should just really target you should use your social media as a target and say, hey, this is how I'm going to distribute my music. This is how I'm going to get my music out. Be very direct, know what you want to produce. For example, I created a social media website or an Instagram per se that just basically showed like my story and my experience of producing my album. Every time I was in the studio, I would take pictures, or I would write different posts and blog about my experience, and people, they start to watch you and follow your timeline and read your posts, so much to the point they're waiting for the album to be released.
Do you have any last pieces of advice for an aspiring artist?
Sure. My advice is have fun, live life. This is your gift. And from a Christian perspective, we understand that this gift is from God. Personally, I do realize and understand that being an artist, taking on the responsibility to want to produce your own album, very, very stressful. Especially if you don't have encouraging people in your life. You want to make sure you have relationships. Relationships are so important, because oftentimes as artists, because our artistry is personal, we can kind of close off and be very selfish about how we're going to handle things. But I tell you, if you're having that perspective, this is not the route for you, because you can become just overwhelmed, and something that you found to be so in love with in the beginning can become your enemy if you don't know how to mold that gift. Some other things I would say is have rest time where you just sit back, you reflect, not time for the studio, not time to perfect your runs and your riffs in the studio or anything like that, but just time to think about, wow, the experience of your album, and just love what you do, and you can be a successful artist who can produce potentially your own EP or album.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you, Diana. Deuces.